Okay, we are live. So, welcome everyone to this webinar. Thanks to everyone who is in attendance or who registered. My name is Jack. I work for Dataddo. I'll be moderating this today, and I'm excited to present our CEO and founder, Petr Nemeth, today. So thanks so much, Peter, for joining us and offering to share your wisdom.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Sure. I'd like to maybe wait a minute or two for any stragglers to show up. So in the meantime, Peter, would you maybe just mind introducing yourself and speaking a little bit about your background?
Perfect. Again, thanks a lot for the introduction. Thanks everyone for coming to this webinar. I hope you all get some good insights from it. So this is speaking about myself and my background and my career so far. I've been in the industry for more than 15 years already, originally starting my career as a developer, always working around the data intensive workloads. Then I shifted more towards the data science and business intelligence side, working for the nationwide media company. Then switched a little bit my focus more towards the telecommunication industry. I was in charge of building and designing the platform for a nationwide operator for Internet of Things, powering the low power IoT devices. And, you know, living through the pain of solving the constant data integration problems. And, you know, essentially back in 2018, I decided to actually step into business by myself and decided to start Dataddo. And since then, it was an amazing journey so far.
Okay, thanks for briefly introducing yourself. Before we get to the meat of today's webinar, I would just like to do some housekeeping and go over a list of agenda items. So what we'll talk about today, among other things, is what data integration is, why it's important, why democratizing data is critical for every organization, as well as the different stages of organizational data maturity. We'll touch on how to take the first steps towards becoming data-centric. And then we will end the main session with a short presentation by Peter of the Dataddo platform and how it can help anyone take their first steps and essentially all steps towards integrating data from disparate sources. After that, we will do a quick 10 to 15 minute Q&A session. So if anyone listening today has any questions during the webinar at any point, feel free to type it into the chat and our people will field those. If we don't have time to answer all questions, if Peter doesn't have time to answer all questions asked by the end of the webinar, we will send you an email directly after this with an answer to any questions. And as a final comment, I just want to say that no one needs to take any notes. You'll all be getting an email tomorrow, I believe, with a recording of this, so you can go back and check things or share it with friends or whatever. So with that being said, we can dive right in. So anyway, Peter, first question for you. You can say, what exactly is data integration and why is it important?
Great question for the starter. So essentially data integration is a concept where typically organization or the company has data that are being dispersed into the multiple data sources, and typically from various reasons, typically for the purpose of the business intelligence or data analytics, it has to be put together into, let's say, one single place, one single source of truth, and then, then somehow processed and analyzed. Originally, this used to be reserved for very large organizations, telecommunication companies, bank, insurance companies, large retails, etc. The reason for that is that those companies used to have a fairly low amount of fairly complex systems. And of course, in order to get 360-degree overview of how the company is performed, the data from all those different systems needs to be accessed, extracted, put into one place, and then, analyzed. What has changed, in the past 2 to 5 years is the advent of the cloud. You can see these days that there is a really myriad of the various software as a service applications that are powering the business. It's not only the large organizations, but the SMEs and SOHOs as well. So today, when we actually did our research, we found that the average amount of software as a service, various software as a service applications that are being used among the mid-sized companies is between 20 and 30, which of course, on the one side, give a great, productivity boost to every company, because suddenly they have the access to, various cutting-edge software tools, whether it's for the CRM, for managing the marketing, for managing the finance. But at the same time, as the complexity grows and as the specialization grows, those tools create what we call data silos. And of course, once you are such an organization, even small or mid-sized, you need to access the data from all those different platforms and put them, into the one place. And this process essentially can be called as a data integration.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. It seems to me that many people are intimidated by this process of integrating data. There's so many different cloud sources. It's hard to know where to start, especially if you don't have any analytics experience. It's hard to get buy-in from executives and so on. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about this process of becoming data-driven and how we can overcome the barriers to taking the steps that we need to take?
Yeah. So essentially these days, referring back to my previous answer, with all the let's say abundance of the data and the sheer amount of system that the companies are operating with, it's actually becoming a total necessity. But being in the industry for a while and having many discussions with the various people about the data analytics and data integration, everybody typically starts about the tools. What kind of ETL platform to use, what data integration platform, what storage, what visualization layer to choose. But it's especially at the beginning, it's not about the tools, but it's about changing the mindset of the company, changing the culture to actually become a data-driven. Because you could be perfectly data-driven just purely by utilizing the tools like spreadsheets or Microsoft Excel and whatever it could be. Though it might not be super effective, but you can still be very data-driven by that. So the good way how to start and the good way how this can be addressed is to see it rather as a company culture problem or company culture challenge rather than a technological challenge to be aspiring to. Because once you start with a culture, the tools will come by itself, just by observing the market and finding the right tools for your needs.
I think that's important to note because as you mentioned, it's not so much about the tools, and today the tools are very user friendly, as we'll see in a minute. So the culture is the main obstacle. Maybe you could speak a little bit more about the individual phases of organizational data maturity, how this culture changes over time, and maybe speak about what the ultimate goal of becoming data-centric is.
Yeah. So typically, the decision to become a data-centric is mainly driven from the top to the bottom. It's typically decision that has been made by the management, either purely by the fact that I have already mentioned the abundance of the data and the sheer amount of various services that the company has to deal with today. So of course, as various data-driven technologies are proliferating to the companies, in order to stay competitive, it's becoming more and more necessary to actually adopt such policies. So typically, it's a top-down process, and which means that, or at least how we see it from the evolution from some of our customers, is that typically the organization creates some sort of data analytics organization inside their whole company or inside their whole organization. So they started to look for a data analyst, data engineers, and kind of adding a layer on top of that. But of course, once the company becomes a little bit more data-driven, starting to really adopt data-driven policies, then this very centralized approach become a bottleneck, because suddenly you are, or this central department is receiving requests from the marketing, from the sales, from the finance, from the HR to alter that dashboard, change that data schema at that particular metric. And of course, this can create a very high friction in the organization, and make, let's say, the whole data-driven policies and data-driven adoption very, I would say, not much of a productive. So what we see today as a kind of emerging trend when it comes to the organizations and the way how they are addressing the data analytics issues is to adopting this what can be called as a hub and spoke model, where you maintain some of the core competencies of this centralized organization. Typically, it's about the data architecture, about the governance, about the security, but at the same time, trying to find the right tools to empower the line of the business teams to actually do most of the tasks by themselves. So typically, you have a very specialized and centralized team with a data specialist, but at the same time, trying to empower the people from the marketing, the people from the sales, people from the HR to actually do the most of the data task by themselves. And we also see this on the job market, because if you are looking for data roles, you see suddenly the positions like citizen data scientist, citizen data engineer, citizen data analyst, which are typically the people that has a domain knowledge about the marketing, about the sales, but at the same time are the ones that has the capacity and capability to actually driven the data policies inside the spoke teams. So the decentralized hub is not overwhelmed.
I understand. So it's about centralizing control, but democratizing access. And that's why we see, like you said, citizen data scientists and more data literate business professionals. Yes,
that's absolutely correct. Yeah.
But I guess this ties back into the cultural change, the cultural barriers that you mentioned earlier. That's about culture. Okay, so in order to empower business professionals to become data literate, you mentioned the culture is the most important thing, but we do need to get our foot in the door with certain tools. And in a minute, we'll be, of course, giving a little presentation of the Dataddo platform, which is one of these tools that can be used to empower business professionals. But before we talk about Dataddo in particular, what other tools would you recommend for those just starting out, visualizing data and teaching teams and team members to become a little bit more data literate?
Yeah. The good thing, the approach that we are trying to bring on the market is not to, let's say, make a huge commitment or a huge investment for the organization when they decided to be data-driven. So just by observing the market, we see that there is a very clear evolution. Typically, the organization start with a very simple data visualization cases when they are using guys like Salesforce, HubSpot, Stripe, and others, which might not have that super sufficient data visualization capabilities. So the typical let's say first evolution step or first evolution phase is that you basically connect the data from those platforms that are being used by the operational team or line of the business teams towards a centralized dashboarding platforms like Power BI, Tableau, or Google Data Studio. So of course, those are the tools to start with. Probably they are the most popular on the market. But as the company is evolving, they are typically adding additional layer on top of that. So once they adopt the data visualization tools, they suddenly realize, okay, this is the time to do some sort of data centralization, to create a single source of truth. This typically require a data warehouse. then then they realize, okay, it might be times for more advanced analytics, so let's put some machine learning and artificial intelligence layer on top of that. And there might be other let's say use cases like app-to-app integrations, reverse ETL, which we'll be talking about later, etc., etc. But what is important to say that it's important to choose a path where you can start with it's like with product development. You can start with the MVP phase and then gradually iterate on top of that. And the data, it's exactly the same. When you are building a dashboard where you are building some sort of decision-making machine, it's essentially a data product. So you should have the very same approach, starting with something simple, something very easy to implement, very easy to consume, and then as your needs grow, adding another layer on top of that.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. And for those who are just starting out or thinking about starting out, how would you know, once you're a little bit more familiar with analytics operations and the visualization layer of data integration, how would you know when it's time to move up to the next phase, which I guess would be implementing a warehousing layer and creating a single source of truth, as you well put it?
Typically, it's about observing the complexity. So yes, you can start very simple just by visualizing the data from a Salesforce, for instance. And then, as your team learns how to use that, as your team actually started to adopt that, then, just by observing their request, you will see that they will start asking about, okay, so can we connect this with more about our customers' data? Can we connect this with the data about from our application? Can we connect this with our payment data, for instance? And then then you start realizing, okay, this is the time for the next step to actually invest into a proper data warehouse, into proper ETL platform that is actually capable of doing that. And then once you've done this layer, your organization starting to using that, actively adopting that, you having a request, okay, so perhaps we might need a more robotic process that will automatically send us some notification when some certain threshold about the amount of new customers, amount of new revenue, or drop of in the coming revenue is coming. So then it might be time for another layer on top of that. But it's important to keep this approach and looking for the gradual adoption of the various tools.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. And speaking about tools, maybe now is a good time to transition into our presentation of the Dataddo platform. So Peter will share his slides, and the floor is yours.
Perfect. So just to give you a little bit of a introduction and basically the vision, the background about our platform, we designed the Dataddo platform to be a no-code data integration platform, which is primarily designed for the business teams. By being designed for the business teams, it means that it actually can be operated by people without any technical knowledge when it comes to scripting, when it comes to database operation, etc. Of course, this doesn't mean that we are not friendly for the data engineers. Yes, we are. We provide some offering which actually allows you to basically tap into the low level components of our platform, so you can control it through the API if you want. But the primary message is to make sure that we are actually that the people without technical knowledge can be empowered to actually do a fairly complex data engineering and data integration tasks. So the platform itself is fairly simple. It has three main concepts. It's called source, destinations, and flows. Of course, I will be more in detail referred to each of that. But essentially, source mean it can represent any source from which you are actually want to extract the data, to which you want to connect to. Destination is basically anything where you want your data to be sent. And the flow is let's say, a loose coupling between those two concepts. So if I will start about the sources, at the moment we are providing more than 200 connectors, and we are adding a couple of new connectors every week. We have a very wide range of portfolio of various software as a service applications. So of course, the things like Salesforce, HubSpot, Google Analytics, Exact Online, Stripe, and others you can easily find there. We also provide connectors for the various data warehouses, databases, so guys like MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, as well as the data lakes. Also, if the company has a internal API, or they are using some sort of home build system that has the API capability, it can be connected through our generic connectors that are supporting both JSON, CSV, and XML. And what is also important to say that if somebody has, let's say, a little bit more legacy architecture, which is relying on the files, so typically a couple of files or CSVs, staying on the FTP server or somewhere in the S3 or in some sort of other data lake, this is supported as well. I would like to also touch here a couple of points where we are really unique in the industry. And first of them, that our connectors is what can be called as business ready. It means that the data sets that we are produce are actually ready to be analyzed. So that there are some concepts on the market that can be classified as an ELT, which essentially means that the various platform basically extracts all the data, dump them to your data warehouse, and then you have to do a fairly complex data transformations to actually make some good use of it. In our case, we are trying to offload most of those workloads into the extraction process itself, meaning that harmonizing dates, making sure that the numbers are always in the right formats, currencies in the right formats, etc. Also, when you are trying to work with our platform, we essentially provide you with a connector interface that allows you to easily search for a particular metric, particular attribute. So the platform, you will just type that you are interested in the amount, for instance, or in the invoiced amount, and the platform will tell you in which data set this is available. This means that you don't actually spend hours and hours of actually searching through the documentation and kind of understanding what this particular column in the data scheme means. We also provide the capability of optional exclusion of the personable identifiable information. So let's say in case you want to make sure that those data will not get to the extraction process or to the data warehouse at the first place. And last but not least, I have a little bit touched it at the beginning that we are a little bit opposite the more traditional ELT approach, which essentially dump all your data into the data warehouse. And of course, this part might be very costly. So with our platform, you can only choose the only data that you want. You can choose which of the columns you want. So this can actually save a lot of your data warehouse build. Another very cool feature that is available within our platform is what can be called as a data exploration. So typically, when you are connecting to particular service, we have the capability to actually do the data preview. So you can write, before actually setting up the extraction, you can click on the test data button, and you can basically validate that those are the actual data that you need. And of course, this helps you to validate your data model. And important part is our inbuilt, data quality check. This is the recent feature that we have added. because one of the struggles that many companies have when they are starting to adopting the data-driven policies is to maintain the quality of the data. Because essentially, imagine a situation when you build your decision making on top of a dashboard, which every Monday management look at, and this data to that dashboard might be coming through many different systems. And of course, for us, it's important to make sure that our customers, our users, actually has the capability to be notified when there are either some anomalies or where is something potentially wrong with the data. Because as the data through the extraction process to data warehouse to the dashboard can proliferate to all the different stages, and if those data are potentially wrong, the people that are actually seeing the dashboards or looking at the inside might be completely decoupled from the data of the original systems. So for us, it's important to offer this functionality to kind of add another layer of the security for the decision making of our users. This, of course, helps you to reduce your data warehouse bill as well, because no flow data actually get into your data warehouse. And what we are actually prepared to do, what we are about to release in a couple of weeks and months, is actually the capability of adding rule-based integration triggers based on the data quality checks, meaning that you can decide that in that particular amount or for that particular amount of null values or for that particular amount of anomalies, the integration itself will not be triggered. So your data, your decision-making process will not be endangered. So this was for the sources, and of course for the destination, we support pretty much everything that's on the market when it comes to the traditional storages like data warehouses, guys like Redshift, Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, and others. We also support traditional databases like MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, as well as data lakes like S3, Amazon Blob Storage, and things like that. What is also important that through our capability of Smart Cache, we have the capacity of providing a direct connection to the dashboarding apps. So either if you are having a very, let's say, less data intensive use case, so typically when you have just a couple of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousand rows, or you don't have the need for such a heavy data transformation, you can perfectly utilize this and try to build your dashboards without actually investing into the data warehouse. This is also a very good tool for the prototyping itself. So you can typically start with with those direct connections to the dashboarding apps. Buy in the management, fix your data model, and once you are ready to invest into, let's say, data warehouse, you can essentially switch the destination from Tableau to Snowflake, and that it has already been proven through the existing dashboard, existing platform. And of course, the last thing that is important to mention is the software as a service applications as destinations. This is these days being known on the market as a reverse ETL, which is the case that's very mostly focused on the operational analytics. So typically, you have some of the data about your customers in your data warehouse that somehow originated through some clever process of scoring or whatever it could be, and you want to send those data back to guys like Salesforce, HubSpot, Stripe, and others. And this is the capability that we are offering as well. And of course, speaking about the flow, flow is actually something that unifies, connects the dot between the sources and the destination. So flow provides you the capability of actually choosing whatever sources you want to send to whatever destination the data should end. The important part is that for some of the cases which doesn't require heavy data transformations, we have something called data blending. So if you just want to join the data from the couple of tables and strongly simplify your transformation in a data warehouse, or you simply don't like the way how the data joining works in Tableau, Power BI, or Data Studio, you can simply do it here and have it more under the control. And of course, for those users of the data warehouses, we of course provide the multiple write modes. So essentially, it's not about appending the data, but sometimes you need to do absurd, sometimes you need to do truncate inserts, and this is fairly well supported for each of the destination that we support. And last and importantly, Dataddo offers you with a centralized management. So you have one place to look at when something breaks down. You have a very comprehensive debugging tools. You can see the logs. You can debug the certain operations. You are being notified that something goes wrong. Importantly, you can choose 16 different data processing locations. So in case you prefer your data to be processed in the Europe or in the West Coast, East Coast, Asia Pacific, this is very well possible within Dataddo. We also support for large use cases multiple users and tenant. So if you have a large organizations with multiple teams, multiple users, this can be perfectly capable of that. And of course, for those more I would say security-aware customers, we provide the custom encryption keys. So we provide the capability of doing SSH tunneling and security features like that. And that's all from my side.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I hope that our audience found that useful. I would just like to add here to this last slide. Of course, yes, we have a 14-day free trial available. It's worth mentioning that we have just launched a free foundation plan, it's called, which allows you to integrate any amount of data, extract any amount of data from up to 3 sources and send it to any number of dashboarding applications or Google Sheets weekly. So if you sign up for a 14-day free trial and need some more time, you can use our free plan indefinitely. So that being said, maybe we can take some questions from the audience. Actually, this first one relates to what I just spoke about. Of course, Dataddo offers a free plan, but one thing that we generally didn't talk too much about is cost. How much does all this cost? How much do you need to get started?
So as I mentioned in the beginning, that is important to, when adopting the data-driven policies, it's important to actually stick with this gradual adoption schema. And of course, when designing our business model, when designing the way how the actual platform will be priced, we had this in mind. So for us, we offer a volume-based pricing, meaning that basically you can start free, as you have mentioned, but for one of the pay plans, there is a plan for $35 per source. So you can start pretty low cost. For that, you can send the data to any to any destination, whether it's dashboard, whether it's data warehouse, whether it's some other application itself. So it can be fairly easy to start.
Okay, I think it's also worth adding there that even when you take the next step and graduate to the data warehousing layer, I think BigQuery even offers a limited amount of free storage. So there's really not a better time to take the first step towards data integration without making a big investment. So, okay, next question I see. This could be an interesting one. How is Dataddo different than Fivetran or Supermetrics?
Okay, so let's say one of our biggest competitive advantage against those two competitors is the fact that we have I would say, of course, speaking for Dataddo, much higher architecture flexibility. So we really allow you to start very simply with a very simple dashboarding case, and then for whatever storage you decide, whatever workload you decide, we can fully support you with that. We are very business user friendly, and last but not least, we have the great flexibility when it comes to adding the new connectors. So of course, I cannot speak precisely about those two mentioned competitors, but for us, adding a new connector is typically a matter of 1 or 2 business weeks. So we can be very, very flexible and very quickly with that, and we are doing that because we completely understand that these days, yes, everybody might be using Salesforce, everybody might be using a HubSpot or Stripe, but typically each of the client or each of the customer has at least a couple of services that are either very niche from the either functional or the geographical perspective. So we believe that this is very important attribute that is actually adding to our competitive mix.
Okay, thanks. I see that you already answered one of our other questions. How long does it take to add a connector? 1 to 2 business weeks, as you said. I see another interesting question here, which is, could you please speak more about the reverse ETL use case? I don't understand why exactly you would want to send data back into an application like Salesforce.
Yeah. So imagine a situation when you have the data about your customers in the Salesforce. So the first step is to extract the data from those customers into your data warehouse, and then in your data warehouse, you might run some additional processing. Typically, when I'm talking about the customers, it might be some sort of scoring. So imagine you get the data from the Salesforce to your data warehouse. You will probably need to join them from other data about from your payment platform, for instance. And then based on those 2 data sets, you will probably need to run some transformations. You will probably calculate some of the scoring of each particular customer. But you would like to have those very same data about the customer score in the Salesforce back again, because Salesforce is a platform that your operational teams are using. Yes, you can give them the dashboards and to actually look at the dashboard, but it could be potentially another layer of friction. So the most comfortable case is actually when you have the capability of actually enrich the data, or what can be called as activate the data, and send it back to the given system. And this is exactly why the reverse ETL is actually taking some foothold on the market. Especially when I can speak about this particular capability, we know that there are some reverse ETL specific vendors on the market. We believe that it doesn't make much sense to actually have a dedicated vendor for the ETL cases and a dedicated vendor for the reverse ETL cases. So we believe that this all has to be done in one single platform, and that's exactly what we are doing at the moment. We are supporting the mostly CRMs as a destination. So you would see in our platform that there is a support for HubSpot, there is a support for Salesforce, there is a support for NetSuite, and we plan to actually invest a lot, into this capability for the coming months.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions? Do you have any other questions? That I can see. Do you have any other closing comments, Peter? I think
no.
I think that's it. Okay, so once again, thank you very much, Peter, for your time and explanation of everything, and massive thanks to the audience for joining us. Once again, you'll get an email with a recording and a survey. We would love to hear your feedback. That would help us moving forward. So you will receive that most likely tomorrow. And we hope to see you next time, which will be soon, to be announced.
Thanks a lot, guys.
So
bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Peter. Bye, everyone.